Welcome back. Today we are going to discuss multi-store model of memory. The multi-store model of memory, also known as modal model or Atkinson and Shiffrin model. This model is a structural model of memory. This model of memory proposed by Richard Atkinson and Richard Shiffrin in 1968. That is why this model is also known as Atkinson and Shiffrin model of memory. The multi-store model of memory is an explanation of memory, and it assumes that there are three unitary or separate memory stores in which the informations are transferred in a linear fashion. The informations are transferred from one store to another in a linear sequence. According to them, the three main stores of the memories are sensory memory, short-term memory and long-term memory. Each of these memory stores differs in three aspects. The first one, the way in which the information is processed, that means the encoding process, and the capacity of the, that is how much information stored, and third one, for how long the information is stored. The information passes from store to store in a linear fashion. That means from sensory memory to short-term memory and from short-term memory to long-term memory in a linear fashion. Our information processing model is like a computer, like input, processing and output. The same processing take place in our memory. The informations detected by our sense organs enters into the sensory memory, and if we pay attention to the information that enters into the sensory memory, it transferred into the short-term memory. If the information given meaning through the elaborative rehearsal, this information enters into the long-term memory. Each memory stores have a unique structure and it have its own unique characteristics in terms of encoding, capacity and duration. It means that the sensory memory have its own characteristics and the short-term memory has its own characteristics and the long-term memory has its own characteristics in terms of the encoding, capacity and duration. What is encoding? Encoding is the way information changed and stored into the memory. Information can be encoded into three main ways, like semantic, visual or acoustic. The second characteristics of the memory store is their capacity to store the information. The amount of information stored in each memory store is differ from each other, and the third characteristics is the duration of storing that information, how long that information stored in a particular memory store. All memory stores differ based on these characteristics like encoding process and the capacity and the duration. Let us discuss each memory store in details. The first one is sensory memory. It is the first memory store of multi-stage model of memory. Sensory memory is a very short memory store for the information that being processed by the sense organs. The sensory memory can be divided into subsystems known as sensory registers. The sensory registers like iconic, echoic, haptic, olfactory and gustatory. The iconic sensory register deals with the visual sensing, and echoic sensory register deals with the information related to the sound, and the haptic memory deals with the information which is related to the tactile sensing. The sensory stores are constantly receiving the sensory information through the sense organs. If we are not give attention to the sensory memory or the information that received through our sense organs, it will remain in the sensory memory for a very short duration of time. It is typically less than 1 second, and after that it will replaced by the other sensory memory. In the sensory memory, information arises from 5 sense organs: visual, auditory, olfactory, tactile and gustatory, and different store for each senses. The sensory memory store a large capacity of information that is received through our sense organs, but the duration of storing that information is very short. It is typically less than 1 second. If we are not give attention to the sensory memory that received through our sense organs, it will replaced by other memory. So the sensory memory store large amount of information, but the duration is very limited. Throughout our life, we receive a large amount of information through our sense organs. So it is impossible to store permanently all the information that we received through our sense organs. So the information that received through our sense organs only lasts for a few seconds. Okay, attention is the first step of remembering something. If a person's attention is focused any one of the memory store, the information is stored into or transferred into the short-term memory. The next memory store is the short-term memory. The capacity of short-term memory is 7 plus or minus 2 items. The duration is up to 30 seconds. The information is lost from short-term memory through displacement or decay. Through the maintenance rehearsal, we can maintain the information in short-term memory for less than 30 seconds. Maintenance rehearsal is the process of repeating something mentally or verbally without knowing its meaning. And such maintenance rehearsal help to maintain the information for a short period of time, like remembering a phone number only long to make a phone call. It is an example of maintenance rehearsal. So through maintenance rehearsal, we can maintain the information for a short period of time. It is typically less than the 30 seconds. While we doing the maintenance rehearsal, we are just repeating the information mentally or verbally without understanding the meaning of that information. Through the continuous rehearsal, we can regenerate or renew the memory trace, and it will strengthen the memory when it transferred into the long-term memory. The information that present in the short-term memory through the elaborative rehearsal transferred into the long-term memory. Okay, the maintenance rehearsal not enough to transfer the memory in the short-term memory into the long-term memory, but the elaborative rehearsal is needed to transfer and making it a stronger memory and transferred into the long-term memory. It means the continuous rehearsal of the information that is stored in the short-term memory helps to transfer it into the long-term memory and make it a strong memory. The elaborative rehearsal means the process of linking new information to the old information that present in the long-term memory. If the new information which we received are meaningful to us, then only we can connect it into the information that already present in the long-term memory. Through this elaborative rehearsal, we can store the new information into our long-term memory, and we can retrieve it back to the short-term memory whenever it is necessary. If the maintenance rehearsal does not occur, the memory present in the short-term memory lost due to displacement or decay. The elaborative rehearsal is a deeper level of memory processing. That means the maintenance rehearsal is not enough to store an information in a long-term memory. For storing information in long-term memory, the elaborative rehearsal is necessary. That means the linking the new information in the information that present in the long-term memory. Elaborative rehearsal is more effective than the maintenance rehearsal because it helps us to encoding the new information meaningfully. And the elaborative rehearsal is a deeper level in the information processing model. So, if we are doing elaborative rehearsal, the information is transferred into the long-term memory or the store into the long-term memory. And the next store in the information processing model is long-term memory. Long-term memory has unlimited capacity and duration. It encodes information semantically. Information that stored in the long-term memory can be recalled back into the short-term memory when it is needed. When an environmental stimuli is detected by the sense organs, that information or that the sensory register stored in the sensory memory. We are receiving informations through our 5 sense organs, and in our daily life we are receiving large amount of information, but it is not stored in our memory. It is not possible to store all the information that is received through our sense organs. Because of that, the sensory information that we received through the sense organs only available in the sensory store for a very short period of time. If we are not pay attention to any of the sensory register in the sensory memory, it will replace or decay. The sensory information that receives attention from the part of the individual transferred to the short-term memory. In short-term memory, the information is maintained for a very short period of time, the time of maintaining information in short-term memory is based on the type of rehearsal. In short-term memory also, the information present in very short period of time. The time depends upon our rehearsal. If we are doing maintenance rehearsal, the information present only less than 30 seconds. If you are doing elaborative rehearsal, that will help to regenerate the memory trace and the memory becomes stronger and transferred into the long-term memory. The last store of multi-store model of memory is the long-term memory. Here we can store unlimited informations for unlimited duration of time. If we want some information in a particular time, we can recall the information from the long-term memory to the short-term memory. This is not to assume that any item that is stored in the long-term memory can retrieve at any time. The retrieval is based on the connections or cues or association to the memory. This is not to assume that the information that stored in our long-term memory can accessible at any time in our life. It is noted that the connections, associations or cues that maintain in the memory deteriorate and the information remain intact but unreachable. So, continuous rehearsal is needed to maintain the memory trace. If it is not rehearsed, the associations or cues that we made during the encoding process is deteriorate and it will remain intact in long-term memory but unreachable. Okay, I think all of you understood the multi-store model of memory, and see you in the next time. Okay.